Welcome to Defending Against Encrypted Threats with F5 SSL Orchestrator. My name is Brad Otlin, a solutions engineer with F5 Networks. We all know what encryption is and why we use it, but really the total impact of encryption is really not all that obvious. Certainly encryption is used to secure our data. It's used to protect sensitive information from eavesdropping. But there are so many other things here we really need to consider. Things like compliance, how and why we use it, and what we must protect. The challenges of encryption, what encryption may unintentionally hide and makes it easier for exploitation, and how to overcome some of these challenges. So we're going to spend the next few minutes, hopefully not too long, talking about each of these. But first, let's examine the actual impact of encryption. I just want to remind Bob and Tony that I probably can't see the chat or any of the Q&As. So if you need to just interrupt, just interrupt and let me know that there's something that we need to kind of talk about, or just something someone wants to hear about. If you can't wait till later. A caveat real quick is, as you probably know, SSL and TLS are very similar. They're not exactly the same thing, right? TLS is a newer version of the SSL protocol. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'll probably say SSL a lot more than I will TLS, but know that I'm actually referring to the TLS protocol. So encryption is the new normal, right? We've been saying that everything is the new normal over the past year, but when it comes to internet security, right, encryption is the new normal. Since it's 2021, this really shouldn't be too shocking to anyone. But just 7 short years ago, most of the internet was still unencrypted. That's right. But then in a short span of time, all these events unfolded, right? Starting with Edward Snowden, revelations of privacy and misused trust, followed by an onslaught of attacks on cryptography. But then we started moving to plugging these holes. We have HTTP2, we've got certificate pinning, certificate transparency, TLS 1.3 was recently ratified. We now have perfect forward secrecy, or PFS, lick the curve, and there's plenty on that list. But browser vendors, right, Google, Firefox, they're systematically deprecating and getting rid of the weaker security, such as SSL3, TLS 1.1, RC4, RSA, SHA-1. And they're promoting search results for HTTPS URLs, and they're breaking the older ciphers. And then encryption's gotten easier to do with SSL Labs. You punch in a domain in SSL Labs and it tells you how secure the website is, or your website, what you need to do to clean it up and make it more secure. And then we also have cheaper encryption with companies like Let's Encrypt, who is giving away certificates for free. But in the end, right, we went from 25% encrypted traffic 7-8 years ago to close to 90% encrypted traffic today. Now you'll see that number from different people ranging anywhere from 75 to 95, but 90% is a pretty good guess. But that includes web traffic, email, server to server, API traffic, voice, chat, everything's encrypted, and it probably should be. So privacy concerns are driving this growth in encrypted traffic, and the increase of encryption creates a blind spot, and hackers are using SSL to hide their cyber attacks. So earlier I mentioned perfect forward secrecy, or PFS. And this is one of the most profound changes that has actually happened recently. Maybe not too recently, but for many years we relied heavily on RSA cryptography to establish secure connections. But all along, the cryptographers knew of this weakness, that by the virtue of the way RSA works, access to a server's private key meant being able to completely unencrypt all traffic that's out of band. And if any of you are web admins or security admins, you know that you've got to put an RSA key along with the certificate on your web servers or your security appliances. And those keys may or may not be easily accessible by admins or anyone else has access to the box. As a matter of fact, many That's how many SSL visibility products worked for a long time. And we thought that private keys were hard to compromise. But then, if you remember a few years ago, there was this Heartbleed vulnerability that showed us how wrong that assumption was, as it systematically spilled private keys through a buffer overflow attack. So we quickly pivoted to a more secure handshake algorithm. We introduced elliptic curves and ephemeral keys, which ultimately breaks out of band encryption and any attack that could leverage the server's private key. Oh, and by the way, PFS broke all the other SSL visibility products out there. It's also worth noting the introduction of TLS 1.3 completely removed the option to do RSA handshakes. That's great. And greater than 1/3 of the top 1 million sites are now supporting TLS 1.3, which enforces these PFS ciphers. The RSA handshakes are no longer allowed. Chrome and Firefox both support TLS 1.3. And as the time I wrote this PowerPoint, Edge and Safari are not too far behind if they're not already supporting that. So what's driving this move to encrypted traffic today? I've got about 7 bullets on this page right here, and I wanted to kind of explain them and just instead of just reading them. So the attention today on user and data privacy is driving this explosion in encrypted traffic. If you're a user of Chrome, you'll see that it presents different types of warnings for SSL issues. If there's an expired certificate, if you're using a wrong host name, if the certificate is self-signed, if there's an untrusted root, if it's a revoked cert, you're going to get a warning in there. A lot of time it allows you to keep going and bypassing, but at least they're warning you and giving you the opportunity to keep moving. I mentioned earlier there are a number of certificate authorities like Let's Encrypt who are now giving away SSL and TLS certificates in an effort to encrypt the entire web. Google search results rank in favor and return encrypted websites ahead of non-encrypted sites. Privacy regulations, such as the European Union's GDPR, don't really require encryption for data and traffic, but many organizations are trying to keep within the regulations and they're using encryption for data and communications. And the ongoing growth of social networks helps to drive the increase in encrypted traffic. And lastly, a lot of us are using this now. The use of Office 365 or Google's G Suites heavily rely on encryption. So everything is encrypted. Almost everything is encrypted right now. Need to stop my share for 1 second. I'm going to reshare. Sorry about that. Okay, so now what? That was a short slide. All right. Encryption is good. It's great. It solves all our privacy issues, right? Well, yes and no, but it's a big, big and complex no. Why? Because, well, encrypted malware. So we all know what malware is, right? It's this generic term for malicious software, viruses, Trojan, worms, spyware, bots, command and control. It's these things that are created for malicious intent that runs on systems without our consent and against our wishes. Malware affects your systems, exfiltrates data, and can ultimately cause social and economic upheaval. Yes, that's right. And if malware is bad, guess what? Encrypted malware is way worse. There's an entire industry that exists to block malware. But encrypted malware slips through the cracks of legitimate 443 or HTTPS traffic. It's embedded in JavaScript, it's in Word documents, it's in email attachments, in encrypted traffic flows, and it's specifically intended to evade traffic. Here's an interesting bit of data. These are the number of days that malware is active and at work on systems before they're detected. Now, these are numbers throughout the world, but that's anywhere from 71 days to 204 days that malware can wreak havoc or siphon sensitive personal data. But what's actually more interesting is that these numbers don't represent when a company discovers the attack. What happens is there's some 3-letter agency knocks on your door and lets you know that they've captured some of your sensitive employee or company data floating around the dark web. This is not attacks that your company has found. You're being told that you've been infiltrated, and this really should terrify you. I know it terrifies us and all of our customers we talk to. So note that encrypted malware isn't just in JavaScript and Word documents. So according to F5's independent research organization called F5 Labs, we do a lot of research. It's vendor agnostic, and we put out these fraud and phishing reports every year. So greater than 90% of the internet is now encrypted. We talked about that before. But so are the phishing websites. What are the phishing websites? So the cheap and free certificates, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to tell a real banking site from a fake one. So we might have seen these before. Someone's scraping websites, banks, airlines, medical websites, and they're creating fake websites that look exactly like the real websites. They're sending out emails and getting some people to click on those, getting you to click on those websites. So hopefully you're going to put some information in there, social security numbers, credit card information. I know some people recently that have done such things, and the websites just look amazingly accurate and real. So you're probably thinking, if you're in security, we have security devices in our network to catch the malware. I'm good, right? But are you really good? Or is it that your security stack is looking at unencrypted payloads? If you look at the top line here, which now constitute only 10% of the internet traffic, we're blindly passing all encrypted malware right through the front door on the bottom line. So to elaborate on this, the top line represents unencrypted threats, but if unencrypted traffic is only 10%, I'm sure most of that traffic is not the bad guys trying to get in, because you're inspecting that traffic. And if you're inspecting unencrypted threats and the bad guys are coming in on the top line, you're going to catch them. On the bottom line, we've got encrypted threats along with encrypted good traffic coming in and out of your network. A lot of these security appliances are bypassing the inspection of this because they frankly can't inspect this type of traffic. But let's say you're going to configure all of your security devices to decrypt traffic, inspect the traffic, and then re-encrypt it and forward it on to the next device. Here we have on the top line a traditional daisy chain security stack. It looks secure, straightforward, simple, but let's take a look at what's happening here. In this traditional daisy chain security stack, you introduce multiple points of failure because, like the name implies, devices are physically chained or cabled directly to one another. If your web gateway in step 1 here fails, then the rest of the chain fails. There's no way to route around. We're also dealing with increased latency is introduced because every bit of traffic must go through every security device, whether it was designed to inspect that type of traffic or not. Additionally, since each and every device must now take on the added task of decrypting and re-encrypting, that's going to slow down your traffic. It might be milliseconds, but milliseconds adds up, and that sometimes can make a world of difference. If these devices have the added task of decrypting and re-encrypting, they're surely going to take on a performance hit. You're taking away CPU and memory from all these very smart devices in order to decrypt and re-encrypt, instead of letting another device which is well equipped to perform that function. Can your design this way? Does it allow you to easily add new security devices in a chain like this for testing against production traffic? Not easily. And this requires downtime and unknown outcomes. Can you steer traffic to different services based on source IP, destination IP, ports, or URLs? Also, how do you handle device failure if you have a pool of devices with no inherent load balancing? This method severely limits your adaptability. As mentioned earlier in the daisy chain, every bit of traffic flows through every security device, even the ones that are designed to inspect certain types of traffic. So you're buying bigger boxes than what's really required to handle the increased throughput and processing to determine it can't inspect the traffic. Every device in your security stack is, if it's now decrypting and re-encrypting, you have to put public certificates and private keys on each and every device. Certificate and key management is really difficult with a few boxes, but can you imagine having to manage it on every security device in your stack? And all this leads to increased security total cost of ownership because you're buying bigger boxes to handle the extra traffic. And also because you're forcing each device to perform additional encryption and re-encryption, the boxes have to be bigger than what's really required to inspect the traffic. It's really a tough situation. And clearly, as the encrypted traffic increases, either your visibility is going down or your cost and complexity are going up. Or maybe there's a happy medium. So what are we supposed to do? So before I delve into that question, we need to frame this conversation on two core revelations. To effectively block malware, you must now decrypt. You can't assume that the endpoints, the clients and servers can do this all on their own, or that any one single security product can catch every form of malware. The diversity of malware requires a diversity in security technologies. And while all security products today can indeed handle encryption, decrypting on every device in the stack is untenable. I'm going to pause right there and consult my colleagues, and Bob and Tony, just want to see if there was any questions that I need to address at this point.
I don't see anything in the chat. Does anybody have any questions before Brad moves on? No. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Bob.
No worries.
So let's take a look at what a good solution might look like. Decryption and re-encryption in one place reduces latency and complexity. And then feeding that decrypted traffic to a set of security technologies allows them, those security devices, to do what they do best without the overhead of them having to do encryption. And this is categorically what you'd call a real SSL visibility solution. And its benefits should be clear. It's reducing complexity without pretending to be a one-stop malware protection device. Again, though, I'll ask you to consider that all of the security products can handle encryption. And to be fair, there are a few SSL visibility solutions out there. But while SSL is in the name, F5's SSL Orchestrator is more than just decryption, and in many ways a complete paradigm shift from what other products are doing. The magic is in the orchestration. F5's SSL Orchestrator is an add-on or standalone security module that runs on F5 Big IP hardware or virtual editions on-prem or in the cloud. It provides for inbound and outbound access, listening for web traffic and other types of traffic. It can then classify the traffic and then make a decision what to do with the traffic. Do I allow it or block it? And if it's allowed, do I decrypt it or bypass decryption? And then do I send it to a service chain of your choosing with various load balanced security inspection devices? To expand on inbound and outbound, SSL Orchestrator has several topologies that I'll show you later, which can be configured. We can do outbound layer 3 transparent proxy, along with outbound layer 3 explicit proxy. We can also do outbound layer 2, which is your traditional bump in the wire. We can also do inbound reverse proxy, so inbound traffic to an application inside. We can do orchestration on that as well. And we can do inbound layer 2 with that bump in the wire again. And orchestration is what happens after the traffic is decrypted. And orchestration, in this case, is dynamic and intelligent. By virtue of real-time traffic analysis and classification, well, that traffic can be steered through a variety of security devices. The security devices are independently addressed and controlled and can be scaled independent of other security products. The traffic classification rules, much like firewall rules, can match on the incoming traffic pattern and then initiate those actions I mentioned: allow or block, decrypt or bypass, or send to a set of security devices. And with F5's full proxy solution, it allows for a diverse set of security technologies within the inspection zone. And this includes devices that operate at layer 2. They can operate at layer 3. We can also put an HTTP or a web proxy in the inspection zone. We can add ICAP or DLP, such as antivirus, your data loss. And we can also put passive or taps directly in the secure inspection zone. You can stage a new security product in a new service chain and create a rule that siphons off a small portion of production traffic to test that device in real time with real traffic with no downtime. We can also add and remove individual security devices from load balance sets. We can scale up, we can replace, we can remove for maintenance without incurring any downtime or outages. You can also identify traffic deemed sensitive, such as financial data or health data related websites, and bypass decryption, because we really shouldn't be doing that due to privacy, and still send to a set of security devices for inspection. And that's what I'm going to show you a little bit in my demo. This is orchestration, and this is a real game changer in the SSL visibility landscape. So as mentioned, SSL Orchestrator supports a diverse set of security products. You can see here in this page here, it provides a service catalog to help you identify and configure specific vendor solutions. So if you're using some McAfee products, a McAfee web gateway, or if you're using some Fireeye at layer 2, or let's see, a Palo Alto firewall, these devices can be added inside our decrypted inspection zone. And this list is growing. When you're configuring this tool, you're presented with these lists of vendors. If your vendor is not specifically listed here, you can say, I need a generic layer 3 device. And any device, whether it's listed here by vendor name or not, is going to work in our inspection zone. We populate this for vendors that we have done explicit and deep testing with, but we continue to grow this list. So to summarize, F5 SSL Orchestrator is more than just SSL visibility. It provides for intelligent, automated orchestration for inbound and outbound. You can allow or block traffic. You can decrypt or not decrypt. You can inspect with one security device or many security devices. We've got broad support for PFS ciphers with FIPS protection and robust cryptographic control. With SSL Orchestrator, it's way more than just visibility. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much with those slides. On this page here, we've got a couple of resources. You don't need to worry about scribbling this down. A lot of this will be sent out after the webinar. But I've got Bob and Tony's contact information, my contact information. Feel free to email any of us. A couple of links to our YouTube channel, some other webinars that we've talked about, and just some more information on F5 Federal on our f5.com website. But again, these links and information will be sent out after the webinar.
Hey,
So
Brad.
I hope I didn't. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wasn't sure if you were moving into the demo, but I just wanted to address 2 questions that came in.
Yeah, I'm going to hit into the demo, so let's hit some questions right now, and I'm going to stop my share.
So first question was, is a recording of this webinar going out? Yes, to all of the people who registered, this webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to everybody by close of business tomorrow, so watch out for that. Feel free to reference it or use that as inspiration to formulate new questions. I did get a second one that I wanted to propose to you, Brad. Does this solution support the NIST approved ciphers for federal?
Yes, it does. We've worked with NIST. We've worked with them for years on what ciphers are required to be compliant, and happy to say that we've met and exceeded all required NIST requirements, and we support I would say every cipher that they put out there that must be supported in order to fulfill the check boxes that NIST requires for our federal customers to be compliant with those guidelines.
Awesome. And I don't have another question, but I do have a statement. The audience just wanted to show their appreciation of the pace that you did for your presentation. So they thank you.
Right. I'm not sure if that means we're glad you blew through it real quick, or I spoke at a good pace, but I'm just going to take that as a thumbs up. So I will. I'll just take that as a good remark. So I'm going to bring up my demo environment, and what I'm going to showcase to you is how easily it is to configure an SSL visibility solution with orchestration for an outbound use case. So outbound use case is you are responsible for securing your employees internal to your enterprise having access to the internet. So they're going through some type of proxy. We have a list of devices in our inspection zone, and we are going to send traffic to those decrypted. So those devices, like I've said before, can do what they do best and inspect traffic. They'll receive traffic in clear text, and they just need to inspect and then pass it on. And then I'll talk about the inbound use case as well. So I'm going to move some things around so it can fit. Make sure I'm still logged in. All right, and I will share desktop. So someone can verbally give me the thumbs up that you see my web browser with what looks like an F5.
You are good to go.
All right, I got the good screen up. So hopefully, or maybe not, some of you have seen the F5 Big IP Web GUI, a web interface. This is what it looks like here. Most people that manage their F5 do it through the GUI. Some of it, a lot of it can be done command line. It can also be done through our management platform called Big IQ. We also support a wide array of APIs, so other management tools do have access to manage Big IP. So SSL Orchestrator, you'll see it, the menu over here on the left side. And I have taken the liberty of doing some pre-configuration in the SSL Orchestrator just for time, so that we don't take a lot of time doing the same kind of steps over and over again. But when you come into the configurator, we're going to start, and it'll actually probably the first time utilizing it, it'll kind of look like this. And this menu shows you what some of these topologies are, and I've mentioned them before: layer 3 transparent proxy, layer 3 explicit proxy, layer 2 outbound. If you look over here, this is grayed out and this is grayed out. Those are options that are available in our hardware platforms. I'm doing this in a virtual environment, so these are some of the environments that just aren't available in the virtual environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And again, the first thing I'm going to configure, like I said, is an outbound topology. So users in your environment going out to the internet. So the name that it starts off with is just going to call it SSLO. I'm just going to, for ease, just call it outbound. And I'm going to use the protocol of we support TCP, UDP, and any other thing that's not TCP or UDP, right? Like ICMP is neither. I'm gonna create one that does any, so it does all of it. And I'm gonna click layer 3 outbound. And go ahead and click next. So SSL configurations, if you're familiar with F5, you know that you can and typically do create an SSL client profile and an SSL server profile. And this screen allows you to do both. Here's on the client side and here's the server side. So I'm going to do that all in one fell swoop. So for outbound traffic, what we're going to do is we're going to select a certificate and key that is going to be used to re-sign or forge. I don't like saying forge because it doesn't sound on the up and up, but to re-sign or recreate certificates. So you go to f5.com, there is a certificate that was created by our CA, might be Entrust. They created our certificate. But what the F5 needs to do in an outbound configuration in order for us to decrypt it, the F5 needs to act as a client to f5.com, and then the big IP needs to act as a server or a web server to your clients inside. So we need to create a certificate and a key that I am an issuer for that your internal clients will trust. So I have this CA that I've created called sub RSA f5labs.com. My clients inside my internal network trust this CA. So I chose the certificate and the key. And for an outbound, for this use case, we do not need to make any changes on our server side SSL profile. So I've already created 4 different kinds of security devices that are going to go in my inspection zone. One of them's a TAP. There's also a web proxy, a DLP, which I have an antivirus server hooked up to, and an IPS. I'm going to add a layer 2 device that happens to be a Fireeye, or is acting like a Fireeye. So I type in fire, it filters down to anything with the word fire in it. And I'm going to double click that. And I'm just going to call this, any name, but FEYE. You'll see here the name is SSLO, right? Almost all the names of the objects that I created are going to start with SSLO. The capital S means I'm creating a service. It's called FI. My network configuration is going to be when the traffic comes into the big IP, I need to create a VLAN to send traffic from the big IP to the Fireeye. That's from big IP. Then I'm going to create another VLAN that's to the big IP, which means it's coming from the Fireeye. So it's all layer 2, and that's why we're only using VLANs here. So I'm going to create 2 new VLANs. I'm just going to call it Fireeye in, which means, I know I called this from, but this is into the Fireeye. And then Fireeye underscore out, spell that correctly. And the interfaces on the big IP, the physical interfaces, or virtual in this case, are going out it's going out on 1.4 and coming back in on 1.5, and click done. This is the type of monitor that we're going to check. Is this path to the Fireeye and back to the big IP, is it open? Service down action, which means I have ignore. So if this Fireeye goes down, I'm going to ignore the fact that it's down and still allow traffic to flow through SSL Orchestrator and the other security devices. You can set it to drop or reset, which means if Fireeye is down, I want to drop it or reset it, which means absolutely no way am I allowing traffic to continue on because my Fireeye is down. That everything must go through that. I'm going to enable port remapping, which means most SSL traffic, right, is over 443. If I send traffic to my Fireeye and I leave the ports as is, the Fireeye is going to see traffic coming into it on 443. A lot of times these security devices see, oh, it's on 443. That's encrypted. I need to decrypt it. Well, I'm already sending decrypted traffic to it. That's the whole point of SSL Orchestrator. So I'm going to remap the port from 443 to 8080 while it's going through the Fireeye. When it comes back to big IP, I'm going to change it back to 443. So a couple of reasons why they do that. I already named one of them because we don't want to confuse the Fireeye. The other way is when I'm going to show you a TCP dump on the Fireeye, I can easily capture on port 8080. So you can see that it's decrypted traffic. So you can use that for troubleshooting as well. You can add iRules to these services, but we're definitely not going to do that now in this environment. Again, so now I have my 5 services. This is not deployed because I haven't pushed it out yet. These other ones have been deployed. I'm going to create a service chain. I mentioned service chains before. I'm going to create one called all services, which means everything over here, all 5 of them, are going to move over here. So if I use this service chain in my security policy, all traffic goes through this. I'm going to save that one. I'm going to create another one for just L2 services, such as my Fireeye and my TAP. So nothing that's IP related, nothing that has IP addresses are in this service chain. Great, I've got my 2 service chains. Next, I'm going to create a security policy. I'm going to create one that we are going to, I mentioned this earlier, we are going to look for any website that's categorized as health or medicine, such as your employee's doctor's website or their insurance website, anything that's a financial website. So if the employee's going to their bank, yes, they're at work. Yes, we know employees spend some time doing stuff on their lunch break, hopefully doing personal stuff. So anything that's categorized as this, I'm going to allow it. I'm going to bypass. Bypass means bypass decryption. It doesn't mean bypass SSL Orchestrator. But we're going to send it through a service chain of only L2 services. So it's only going to go through my Fireeye because Fireeye can look at stuff that's decrypted or that's encrypted. And I'm going to send it to my TAP. Everything else that doesn't go in this SSL pinners rule or the URL filtering, everything that's left over, we're going to allow it. We're going to intercept it, which means decrypt it, and I'm going to send it to the all services. Click OK. Click Save and Next. This is the interception rule. Interception rule is actually what's going to create a listener or a virtual server. In this case, this is source address, which means anyone inside can hit this one. Destination means anything on the outside. Port 0, we're allowing everything. And the VLAN that I'm allowing it on is this already created VLAN on the inside called client VLAN. I'm going to do that. That's everything there. This is just some stuff for routing. I'm going to create a gateway. Nope, I need to create a new one. This is just a gateway. This is pretty much the next hop after Big IP. Heading to the internet. Save and next. A whole bunch of different logging. You could say that's for another day. And now I've got my topology. It hasn't been deployed yet. I'm going to click deploy. This usually doesn't take more than maybe a minute. It's helpful that already 4 out of 5 of my services have already been created. This lab environment is sitting in AWS. So as long as our connection to AWS is successful, we should get a deployment is successful pop-up. There we go. Deployment was completed successfully. So great. I've created this. What does that mean? We've actually created a whole bunch of listeners and virtual servers. There's one, we've created actually 3 outbound virtual servers. The T here, the T in this, T4 means TCP using IPv4. This is U for UDP and OT is for other. So the type of traffic that I send is going to be hitting one of these 3 virtual servers and then be decrypted or not. I am going to bring over a client and I am going to, so this is the Fireeye. I'm SSH to it. I'm going to do a TCP dump with a -X, which means convert to ASCII if you can on port 8080, if you remember. So before I hit enter on that, I'm going to log back in to the client. I'm going to bring this back up. I'm going to start capturing. And I'm going to go to f5.com. And it loaded. I'm going to take a look, see if I've got, yeah. All right, so I went to f5.com from an internal perspective, and the certificate, the issuer name was f5labs.com, and the common name was subrsa.f5labs.com. If you remember, I used that when I created this profile. If you, from your home browser, go to f5.com and look at the certificate, you'll see that this was probably issued by Entrust. So what this is telling me is that the big IP did, in fact, decrypt decrypt and re-encrypt the traffic. You'll probably see here some clear text. What does clear text mean? So this is my client on 10.1.10.50 going to this. This is probably where f5.com is, or something hosted on that page. You remember I said port 8080, I remapped it, but this is all clear text, which means this inspection device actually got clear text, even though between my client and F5, I still have a security lock here. I can actually, let's see, show. Let's see if I have this. See if this comes up. All right, so if I want to download, if I go to some website and I click on something that's actually a virus. Okay, so I have an antivirus server inside my security inspection zone. I tried to download it and it was blocked. I also showed you that we have, what if I want to go to a financial website or a health website? I'll go to chase.com. The classification of chase.com should be financial. Was able to connect to it. Very good. I'm going to look at the certificate and the key, and you can already see something right there that this certificate was issued by Entrust, not by subrsa.f5labs.com. To take that one step further, yeah, I sent a little bit too much traffic to it. Let me get a new SSH session open. I will show you that you shouldn't be able to see any decrypted traffic going to Chase. I'll make this a little bit bigger, but I can scroll all the way up to the top, and anything you see here is completely encrypted. There is no decrypted payload going for this financial website. It'll be the same thing with a healthcare website. So that's Outbound, pretty much in a nutshell. Let's switch over to Inbound. So you're hosting a website and you want to perform SSL visibility on there, right? So number of different security inspection devices you're going to want to use, and I'm going to pretty much use the same one. So I'm going to create now an Inbound configuration. So I'm going to click Add. Again, this page, nothing really happens on this page, just kind of shows you the different things you can do. I'm going to easily call this Inbound. I'm going to leave it as TCP. I'm going to do layer 3 Inbound. Save it next. The only thing I need to do here is put a certificate. This is me hosting websites internally. So I'm going to put my wildcard certificate and key on this big IP, which is, it's going to be star.f5labs.com, or the file name or is wildcard.f5labs.com. And that's all I need to do on this side. I'm going to do save and next. We can reuse the same services that we did for our outbound traffic. So there's nothing I need to do here since I'm not adding any new services. They've already been created. Service chains, I can reuse the service chains as well. Don't need to create anything new. Now, just because I'm doing an inbound and an outbound use case on the same appliance doesn't necessarily mean that that's how we recommend it, or that's best practices, or that your security group will allow that. I'm just using the same box, showing that it can be done. Again, it's not necessarily should be done. So for simplicity, I'm going to say all traffic coming into my environment, I'm going to allow it. I'm going to intercept it because I want to look at every single thing coming in here. And I'm going to send it to this security chain right here with all devices. So everything is allowed, everything's coming in. Save and next. The source is all zeros. So from an internet perspective, that's any client on the internet can come in. My destination, I'm going to leave as all zeros, which means in this case, I'm acting as a gateway to my internal. So the client is actually going to be addressing an internal server's IP address, not an IP address on the F5. There's two different ways you can do it, but it's just for what we're trying to show here. It's going to look exactly the same. And I'm only going to put 443 because I don't want to let anything inside my network. The VLAN that I'm capturing on is my outside or my outbound VLAN, which is where the internet clients are. I'm going to put an HTTP profile in here because we need to tell it that it's HTTP so we can inspect it. And I'm going to set up SNAT auto map, and I'm going to use default route. And again, you can turn logging anything from error, which is kind of middle of the road, to debugging where we log every single thing, or just to emergency. Typical syslog type logging. Here's everything we've already done. I'm going to deploy it. I know we're running up at the top of the hour. We got 4 minutes. That should give me just enough time to show you the inbound traffic and show you decrypted inbound traffic. While that's deploying, I'm going to get this spun up over here, get this ready to go. Go away. I don't need you to tell me that. Go ahead and get ready. New open tab. Deployment was successful. Thank you very much. The demo gods and AWS. So again, we've created an inbound topology. We've created an inbound virtual server. And as you can look here, there's probably 20 virtual servers that were created for the security devices. So the Fireeye, that one Fireeye created 8 virtual servers. Some are for TCP, some are for UDP, some are for IPv4, IPv6, and these are for the inbound going to the Fireeye, and these are coming from the Fireeye. And every different type of security device has a different set of types or amount of virtual servers. So we've got this ready. Let's take a look here. See if I'm still connected. Yeah, that timed out because that's throwing a lot of traffic to it. So SSH. This is that same inspection device. So I'm going to TCP dump, going to that same device on port 8080. I'm going to go to an internal site called test0.f5labs.com. See if it loads. I'm already seeing traffic. The page is still loading. I'm going to kill that. So it's still loading in the background. But we've got my client going to my internal IP address. We're seeing it on port 8080 on the Fireeye, and we are seeing decrypted traffic. Get slash. My web server might be having a little bit of issue. Maybe I can hit another internal site. What I do want to show you is what does this traffic look like on the F5 between the client and the F5? Well, it should look encrypted. But I just want to show you that the actual client is sending and receiving encrypted traffic. And let me just get my syntax on the F5. So TCP dump -x, capital X. So let me convert it to ASCII if I can on my outbound VLAN on port 443. Let's go hit one of these. I know we're right about the top of the hour. I'm about to wrap things up, but this is the client to the F5 on port 443, and we do not see anything decrypted. This is all probably TCP setting up TLS handshake and all encrypted traffic. This, you might have seen some plain text. This is actually the certificate, but the certificate is sent in plain text. Certificate is sent before the TLS handshake. That's what makes it but there's nothing special or hidden about that. And there you have it, defending against encrypted threats with F5 SSL Orchestrator.